In the chilling tale of the legacy of the hidden chamber, the Walker family's dream of renovating an old house turns into a nightmare when they uncover the remains of a centuries-old witch entombed within its walls. As strange and terrifying events unfold, they attract the attention of a sinister cult devoted to resurrecting the ancient witch's power. Amidst whispers of curses and dark rituals, the family finds themselves caught in a web of ancient magic and malevolent forces. The story reaches a heart-pounding climax when the witch's spirit possesses one of their own, leading to a horrifying twist of fate. Will the Walkers escape the clutches of this dark legacy, or will they be consumed by the very secrets they unearthed? Dive into this spine-tingling saga, where every turn is a descent into terror, and uncovering the past might just seal your doom. The sun was setting as the Walker family's car turned onto the gravel driveway, its tires crunching softly. The old house stood before them, a sprawling structure of weathered brick and wood, its windows like dark, watchful eyes. It was a stark contrast to the bright, modern cityscape they had left behind. But to Tom and Sarah Walker, it was a dream come true, a chance to escape the hustle of city life and restore an old house to its former glory. Their two children, 15-year-old Emily and 12-year-old Jake, were less enthusiastic. Emily, with her earphones firmly in place, was lost in her own world, while Jake's eyes were glued to his handheld game console, indifferent to the world around him. Tom's voice broke the silence. "Here we are, folks. Our new home." His eyes gleamed with excitement as he gazed at the house. Sarah smiled, sharing in his enthusiasm, though a flicker of apprehension crossed her face. She had always been more practical, more aware of the challenges ahead. As they unloaded their belongings, the house loomed over them, its presence both imposing and intriguing. The air was filled with the scent of old wood and the faint, musty aroma of history. Inside, the house was a labyrinth of rooms and corridors, each telling a story of decades past. The faded wallpaper, the creaking floorboards, and the dust-laden chandeliers spoke of a bygone era. Sarah's designer eye saw potential in every corner, envisioning a blend of the old and the new. As they explored, they found the house larger than they had imagined. It was during this exploration that they stumbled upon the basement door, locked and forgotten. "We'll deal with this later," Tom said, making a mental note to get the lock changed. That evening, they gathered in what would be the living room, surrounded by boxes and furniture, yet to be placed. Tom lit a fire in the old fireplace, and the family sat around, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. Tom raised a glass of wine. "To our new life, and to all the memories we'll create here," he toasted, his voice filled with hope. Sarah joined in, her smile warm. "To new beginnings," she echoed, while Emily and Jake managed a half-hearted cheer. As they settled in for the night, the house creaked and settled around them, like a living entity acknowledging its new occupants. In the depths of the house, hidden and waiting, the secrets of the past lay dormant, soon to be awakened by the unsuspecting family. As the family drifted to sleep, the house seemed to breathe a sigh, its walls whispering tales of the years gone by, of the stories it held within its heart, and of the legacy that was yet to unfold. Ah, my dear nocturnal scholars of the macabre. It's time for a quick scare break. As we linger in these shadowy realms, a small favour I dare to ask. If my tales of terror bring you thrills, do not let our journey end here. Hit like, subscribe, and join our dark congregation. Now shall we delve deeper into the abyss. Let's embrace the darkness once more. Let's get back to the shadows. Chapter 2. The Hidden Chamber. The morning sun poured through the windows, casting a warm glow over the Walker family as they began their second day in the old house. The excitement of renovation filled the air, plans and ideas exchanged over breakfast. Tom, armed with a crowbar and a determination to make the house their own, tackled the task of opening the basement door, which had remained a mystery since their arrival. The basement, a shadowy expanse of cold concrete and cobwebs, was cluttered with remnants of the past, boxes of forgotten belongings, old furniture, and a bulky, antiquated washing machine that seemed out of place. Determined to make space for their renovations, Tom decided to move the washing machine, but as he maneuvered it down the rickety stairs, his foot slipped. The machine tumbled from his grasp, thundering down the steps, each thud echoing through the house like a heartbeat. With a final resounding crash, the machine collided with the basement wall, leaving behind a gaping hole. Dust settled around Tom as he caught his breath, his heart pounding. Curiosity piqued. He approached the hole, peering into the darkness beyond. "I found a secret room," he called out, his voice a mix of surprise and excitement. The sound of hurried footsteps followed as Sarah, Emily and Jake raced down to the basement, their faces alight with curiosity. Together, they chipped away at the old bricks, widening the breach, the anticipation building with each strike. As the last brick fell away, they peered inside the hidden chamber. It was small, almost claustrophobic, the air stale and heavy, but it was what lay within that drew a collective gasp of horror. Against the far wall, a skeletal figure was nailed in place, its bones yellowed with age. Surrounding the remains were faded runic symbols and ancient drawings, etched into the walls, their meanings lost to time but emanating a sense of foreboding. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a scream, while Tom stood frozen, unable to tear his gaze away from the macabre sight. Emily clung to her mother, her eyes wide with fear, and Jake, the youngest, stared in fascinated horror. For a moment, they were all silent, the only sound the faint, eerie whisper of the house around them. Then, Tom stepped forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "What have we found?" The discovery of the body, entombed within their new home, sent a chill down their spines. Questions raced through their minds. Who was this person? Why were they walled in like this? And what did the symbols mean? As they stood there, the initial shock giving way to a morbid curiosity, they didn't notice the faint, almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere of the house. It was as if their intrusion into this hidden chamber had awakened something, a presence that had lain dormant, biding its time, unaware of the dark path their discovery would lead them down. The Walker family stepped back from the chamber, the seeds of paranoia and fear already sown in their hearts. The house, with its long-buried secrets, had begun to weave its sinister spell. Tom's mind was racing as he drove to the local police station. The image of the skeletal remains, walled in the hidden chamber of their new home, was imprinted in his thoughts. He parked his car and walked briskly into the station, a sense of urgency driving him. At the reception, Tom explained his shocking discovery to the officer on duty. The officer's reaction was not what Tom expected. Instead of surprise or disbelief, there was a flicker of something else. Excitement, perhaps, or anticipation. "Ah, that old house," the officer mused, leading Tom to a private room. "I'll get someone on it straight away. But please, let's keep this quiet for now. We don't want to cause any hysteria." Tom left the station feeling uneasy. The officer's overly enthusiastic response and the insistence on secrecy gnawed at him. Something didn't feel right. Back at home, he relayed the conversation to Sarah. "They said they'd send someone," Tom explained, still processing the odd encounter. Sarah nodded, but her eyes were troubled, reflecting her husband's unease. In the days that followed, the atmosphere around the Walker family shifted. There was a palpable sense of being watched. Strangers lingered near their home, their gazes too intent, their presence too constant to be coincidental. A car that seemed to be there a little too often. A figure standing across the street, disappearing when approached. Emily was the first to notice. "Mom, there's that man again," she whispered one evening, peering out the living room window. "He's just standing there, watching." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She had felt it too. The unsettling sensation of eyes on her family, tracking their every move. Tom tried to reassure them, suggesting they were just nosy locals, curious about the new residents and their home's macabre discovery. But even he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The officer at the police station, a member of the cult, had indeed recognized the significance of Tom's find. The old house, long watched by the cult, contained the remains of a figure central to their beliefs, a witch from centuries past, a key to their dark aspirations. The discovery had set things in motion, things that had been waiting, dormant, for the right moment. As the family lay in bed at night, the shadows outside seemed to press closer, the darkness filled with whispered conversations and the soft tread of feet. The cult, patient and calculating, watched and waited, their plans slowly unfurling. They needed the family, unknowing pawns in a game that stretched back centuries. And so, the Walker family found themselves enmeshed in a web of secrecy and ancient beliefs, their dream home turning into a place of creeping dread, each day bringing them closer to a truth too sinister to imagine. The walls of the house, once a symbol of a new beginning, now felt like a trap, closing in around them, hiding secrets that were slowly, inexorably coming to light. Chapter 4. The Ritual of the Ancient Witch. In a secluded clearing, deep within the dense woods that bordered the town, a clandestine gathering was taking place under the cloak of a darkness. Hooded figures stood in a circle, illuminated only by the flickering light of torches planted into the ground. The air was thick with the scent of burning herbs, and a low, monotonous chant filled the space, echoing eerily among the trees. At the center of the circle stood a grand altar, adorned with symbols and artifacts of ancient origin. The cultists, their faces hidden beneath their hoods, moved in a slow, ritualistic dance around it, their voices rising and falling in a hypnotic cadence. Among them, barely discernible in the dim light, was the police officer from the station, his face obscured, his voice joining the chorus of the chant. This gathering was the culmination of centuries of waiting, of searching, and now their moment was at hand. The head cultist, an imposing figure with an air of authority, stepped forward. He raised his arms, and the chanting ceased, a hush falling over the gathering. "Brothers and sisters," he began, his voice resonant and commanding, "tonight we stand on the brink of a new era. The remains of the ancient witch, the first of our order, the keeper of our darkest secrets, have been found." Murmurs of excitement rippled through the group. The ancient witch, as she was reverently called, was more than a historical figure to them. She was a symbol of their deepest beliefs, a martyr who had sacrificed herself to preserve the cult's ancient knowledge and power. Her body, entombed within the walls of the old house, was believed to hold the key to untold arcane wisdom and strength. The witch, who lived centuries ago, was a powerful sorceress, feared and respected. The head cultist continued. She was one of the first to harness the dark energies that flow through this world. When the ignorant and fearful sought to destroy her, she chose to conceal herself within the very fabric of her sanctuary, entrusting her legacy to the future. The importance of the find was clear to every member of the cult. The ancient witch's remains were not just a relic. They were a vessel of power, a connection to an ancient and formidable magic that had been lost to time. Now, with the discovery of her sacred remains, we can begin the ritual to awaken the energies she harbored. We will reclaim her power, her knowledge, and with it, we will usher in a new age for our order. The cultists responded with a fervent, unified cry, their voices echoing through the night. The ritual that followed was dark and arcane, a series of incantations and offerings made to the spirit of the ancient witch. The air around the altar seemed to shimmer and twist as if the very fabric of reality was bending under the weight of their ceremony. As the ritual reached its climax, the cultists' excitement turned to fervor, their chants growing louder, more insistent. The woods themselves seemed to respond, the wind whipping through the trees, carrying with it whispers of ancient secrets and long-forgotten power. And as the ritual concluded, the head cultist proclaimed, "The path is set. The awakening has begun. Soon, the ancient witch will rise again, and her power will be ours." Unbeknownst to the Walker family, their discovery had set in motion events that would change not only their lives, but the very fabric of the town's history. The cult, now more determined than ever, prepared to make their next move, their eyes set on the old house and its unsuspecting occupants. Chapter 5. The Visitor. The house was silent, save for the occasional creak of the old floorboards as Sarah busied herself with unpacking. The kids were at their new school, adapting to their new environment, and Tom was at an important meeting for his new job. The quiet was a welcome respite, a chance for Sarah to gather her thoughts and plan the renovations. A knock at the door shattered the stillness. Sarah, a bit startled, wiped her hands on her apron and went to answer. Standing there was a man she had never seen before. He was tall, with an intense gaze that seemed to look right through her. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with caution. "You will invite me in," the man whispered, his voice soft yet commanding. Without fully understanding why, Sarah found herself responding, "Please come in." There was something about his presence, compelling yet disconcerting. Once inside, the man's strange requests continued. "You will offer me wine," he whispered again. "Would you like some wine?" Sarah found herself asking, as if in a trance. As the man sat, sipping the wine Sarah had poured for him, he uttered another odd request. Now bread and salt. Sarah was in the kitchen, fetching the bread and salt, her mind racing. Why was she complying so readily with this stranger's demands? There was an eerie aura about him, something ancient and unsettling. As she returned to the living room, Tom arrived home. Surprised to see a guest, he asked, "Who's this, Sarah?" The stranger stood, turning his intense gaze upon Tom. "I am a seeker of truths, a guardian of the old ways," he began, his voice hypnotic. "I have come for what lies in your basement. The remains you have uncovered belong to us, to our order." Tom, taken aback, tried to process the man's words. "Our order? What are you talking about?" The stranger moved closer, his eyes locking with Tom's. "We are the custodians of her legacy, the ancient witch whose power sleeps within these walls. And now, I must ask you to surrender her to us." Tom felt a strange pull in his mind, as if the man was trying to weave a spell over him, to mesmerize him as he had Sarah. But Tom's confusion and concern for his family's safety helped him resist. "Sarah, call the police," Tom said firmly, breaking the man's gaze. The cultist leader, realizing his mesmerizing tactics were failing, stood up abruptly. His demeanor changed, the air around him thickening with an unspoken threat. "You do not understand the forces you are meddling with," He warned, his voice no longer soft but sharp and menacing. The witch's power is not to be taken lightly. We will have what is rightfully ours. With those ominous words, he left the house as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving Tom and Sarah shaken and fearful. They knew now that the discovery in the basement had drawn dangerous attention, and that their family was now entangled in something far beyond their understanding. As night fell, the house seemed to close in around them, a sense of impending doom hanging heavy in the air. The Walkers were no longer alone in their home. They were now part of a much darker story, one that had been unfolding for centuries. The Walker family was in turmoil. Tom, his voice laced with urgency, instructed the children to pack their belongings. "We need to leave this place for a while," he said, his eyes darting nervously around the room. Emily and Jake, confused and frightened, hurried to gather their things. Tom's tone left no room for questions. It was clear they were in danger. Just as they were about to open the front door, it burst inward. 4 burly men, clad in dark robes, rushed in, overpowering the family with surprising strength. The Walker family was pushed back into the house, their attempts to resist futile. Following the men was the cultist leader, a sinister figure who exuded authority and menace. "I am Elias," he declared, his gaze fixed on the terrified family. The Walkers were dragged down to the basement, bound and forced to sit in front of the hidden chamber where the witch's remains were entombed. Elias stood before the skeletal figure, an air of reverence about him. "Great Hecate," he addressed the remains, invoking the name of the ancient witch. "We, your faithful servants, have come to awaken your power and bring forth your spirit into a new vessel." The ritual began with Elias chanting in an ancient, forgotten language. The other cult members joined in, their voices rising in a cacophony of eerie sounds. Around the chamber, candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. As part of the ritual, a woman from the cult, robed and hooded, stepped forward. She was to be the vessel for Hecate's spirit. Elias continued his incantations, his hands moving in intricate patterns, directing the energy of the ritual towards her. The atmosphere in the basement grew heavy, the air charged with an unseen force. The Walker family watched in horror, the reality of their situation sinking in. As the ritual reached its climax, the woman began to convulse, her body racked with spasms, her eyes wide with terror, showed a glimpse of the madness consuming her. Elias's voice grew more desperate, but it was too late. The woman's mind couldn't withstand the power being channeled into her. She screamed, a sound of pure agony and insanity, before collapsing to the ground, motionless. The ritual had failed. The power of Hecate, too ancient and potent, could not be contained or transferred, as Elias had hoped. Chaos erupted among the cultists, their leader's composure crumbling as he realized the extent of their failure. Tom and his family, still bound, but momentarily forgotten in the ensuing pandemonium, exchanged glances of fear and desperation. The failed ritual had bought them time, but they were far from safe. The cult's fury at their thwarted plans was palpable, and the Walkers knew they needed to escape before they became the targets of their anger. Chapter 7. The Awakening. Elias, his face a mask of disbelief and frustration, muttered to himself, "I was so sure she was strong enough." His voice trailed off as an eerie, ancient laughter echoed through the basement. All eyes turned to Emily, who stood up effortlessly, her bindings falling away as if they were mere threads. She spoke, but her voice was no longer her own. It was deeper, resonant, with an ageless power. "You have done well," she said, her eyes gleaming with a sinister light. Elias and the cultists immediately fell to their knees, a mix of awe and fear on their faces. Your Highness," they murmured in unison, recognizing the presence that now inhabited Emily. Emily, or rather Hecate, walked gracefully to our remains. "Free at last," she exclaimed. "This vessel had the right energy to free me." The reason Hecate could use Emily became clear. Unlike the adult woman who had failed to withstand Hecate's power, Emily's youth and her open, imaginative mind made her a perfect conduit for the witch's spirit. Her innocence and latent potential were the keys that unlocked Hecate's ancient power, allowing the witch to merge with her seamlessly. "What of the other three?" Elias asked, his voice trembling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Hecate's laughter filled the room again, chilling and devoid of any human warmth. "They will serve as a reminder," she said, her eyes flickering towards Tom, Sarah, and Jake, who were still bound and helpless. The cultists moved quickly, their actions driven by a newfound fervor. Tom, Sarah, and Jake were dragged to the hidden chamber, their pleas and struggles in vain. Hecate watched with cold amusement as the last brick was placed, sealing the chamber with the Walker family inside. Their eyes, wide with terror, were the last thing visible before the darkness swallowed them, just as it had swallowed Hecate centuries ago. In that final moment, as the echo of the brick being set into place reverberated through the basement, the magnitude of their tragedy was palpable. The Walkers, once a happy family full of dreams and aspirations, were now entombed within the walls of their own home, victims of a dark legacy they had unwittingly unleashed. Hecate, now free, stood amidst her followers, her new reign of darkness just beginning, and as the laughter of the ancient witch faded into the silence of the sealed chamber, the house settled once more, its secrets deeper and darker than ever. Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey. If your thirst for the unknown and the unexplained is still unquenched, I invite you to delve deeper into the abyss of terror. Just beyond the veil of reality, another story awaits to send shivers down your spine. Dare to join me in the next video, where the unknown becomes known and the unseen seen. Until then, keep the lights dim and your mind open. This is Professor Shadow, signing off.